I'm very excited to introduce you to the wonderful keynote speaker for this evening, Dr. Rob Rutledge. Dr. Rutledge joins us from Nova Scotia, where he is a radiation oncologist in Halifax. He specializes in breast, prostate, and pediatric cancer. He is also an associate professor in the Faculty of Medicine at Dalhousie University. He has a strong interest in the mind body connection and the incredible abilities of cancer survivors. Here at CancerCare Manitoba, we have been lucky to host Dr. Rutledge on a few other occasions, and we know tonight's keynote will be enlightening and inspiring to everyone listening in. So, I would now like to welcome Dr. Rutledge and hand things over to him.
Thank you very much, Patricia. That's I'm so inspired by CancerCare Manitoba, and what you're creating now is something that I've been advocating for about 25 years. So you guys are ahead of the game. It makes a tremendous difference in people's lives to actually empower them. That was the verb I was hearing. I've been talking about for a long time. So I'm really touched by the vision. And then everybody who's online watching now and who's going to watch potentially this video later, you folks can make a difference in your health. You really can, by tapping into those resources, getting the best care from the medical system. And hopefully you're going to learn a few things from what I'm going to present today. So I'm just going to get on to my slides here. Thanks, Patricia, again. And there, it's going to be a little bit weird as you kind of zoom up here. And then you're going to be able to see my slides now, and let me know if you can't. So thank you, Dr. Navarrete, as well, because really we want to empower the person and make a difference in their lives. I'm coming here from the Mi'kmahi here in Nova Scotia. We are all treaty people. We are in this together. And I was sent also this beautiful slide recognizing that this is about empowerment. No matter what community you're in, I'm going to offer some ideas that can actually make a real difference in your health. And I'm hoping that you can bring that back to your friends and family and community. And then they can learn that they can actually empower themselves. They can tap into the resources that are health equitable, I'm hoping, within Manitoba. So it's just such an incredible pleasure to be here. We're talking about resilience today and how to build both physical resilience and psychological, spiritual resilience. And I'm just covering a few topics here as an overview. And I'm going to start out by trying to define what resilience is. So we're thinking about, that patient who went through the radiation and the chemotherapy for their lung cancer. And was there a way that they could have empowered themselves? They could get themselves healthier and stronger so they could tolerate the treatments more easily, get through the treatments, improve the chance of cure that way, but also recover from the treatments and have a better quality of life from a physical perspective. So the body has a natural capacity to heal itself. How do we facilitate that? How do we enable the body? And then the idea from a resilient mind is the capacity to stay in or return to a positive state of mind. And that's what I'm talking about, kind of psychological resilience. And I'm going to start out, and I'm hoping, John, you can give me the big screen now. I'm going to talk about the hand model of the brain as a way to describe how you can be psychologically more resilient. So from an evolutionary perspective, this is the hand model of the brain. The wrist defines the spinal cord. And then within evolution, the first part of the brain that developed is the reptilian brain, or the brain that's the fight or flight. It gets you out of trouble quickly. And it's actually a very, very important part of our anatomy. And then the next level, like building a house through evolution, the next floor would be the limbic brain. I also call it the irritable brain or the stress brain. It's the reward seeking system, essentially after food and sex and survival and so on. This is, an important part of our brain. It gets us off the couch. So, each part has its place. And then layered on top of that, very, very much in our human ancestry is the frontal lobe and the kind of front part of the brain. And this is the part of the brain that you want to live in more often. So I'm trying to point to this idea that the frontal lobe is the best version of you. It's the one who thinks clearly. It's the one that connects more easily, makes good decisions, is more compassionate. It's the best version of yourself. This is the part of your brain that you want to live in. Your friends and family want you to live in that part of your brain as well. And what happens, we are humans, right, is that throughout the day, sometimes something stressful happens, or we get scared or frustrated, angry, we get down, and we kind of flip our lid and we kind of disengage from the frontal lobe and start living out of the irritable brain that doesn't think more clearly and is a little bit more upset and stress, threatened, and so on. And so the resilience part of this is, how can we live out of our frontal lobe, the best version of ourselves more often? How can we be more resilient so that when those external events happen, we don't flip our lids, or if they do happen and we do get scared, flustered, stressed, that we can return back to that great part of yourself, the part of yourself that you value most. And so this is going to be the talk, both from a physical perspective, because when we take care of our body, those chemicals influence our brain, we become more resilient and stay in our frontal lobes. And also from a psychological perspective, how do we look at the world such that we don't get triggered and primed and kind of lose ourselves? How can we stay centered and calm and clear thinking? So that's essentially the talk is really about you being the best version of yourself more often. And when you do that, your body's healthier, you're happier. That's ultimately really what we're trying to push you towards. Okay. So the first thing I think about is being conscious, being deliberate about what you value most, how you want to live your life, how you want to be in this world, how you want to manifest your love and connection, and what's most important to you. And oftentimes, if we're not conscious of that, we can get blown this way or that way by the situations and flusters and so on, and we lose center. And so I like to actually do an exercise. I'm going to ask you to join me right now. I do an exercise that helps me to remember what I value most, how I want to live my life. So for instance, as a ritual, first thing in the morning, my wife and I usually do about 10 minutes of meditation together. We actually use a biofeedback monitor, and I'll describe more of that. So I'm practicing meditation, changing my brain, getting more calm. At the end of that, I kind of say a prayer. It usually comes out in secular terms. Sometimes there's a little bit of religious language with this as well. But it's like, help me be the best version of myself. Help me be loving. Help me be kind. Helping me be clear in my teaching. And I was doing that same thing as I was coming into this talk as well. Like, please, let me just be that best person that I can absolutely be. So I'm setting that intention for the day, and hopefully that will permeate throughout my life, throughout the day. So it's kind of in that background, helping me to make decisions and be the best version of myself. So you can do it as a ritual, first thing in the morning as you set your aspiration for the day. You can do it before you go to sleep. I'm going to have a good night's sleep so I can wake up tomorrow and let my love out into the world. Or in the midst of difficult situations, going into that difficult situation, like you're going into a medical visit. And yes, a medical visit can be very stressful. And so you set that intention. Let me be centered. Let me be clear thinking. Let me be confident. Let me advocate for myself. Let me, do what's best for me, because I'm the most important person. Actually, you are the most important person in the healthcare system, is the person who has the cancer diagnosis. So you set that intention. I'm going to do the best I can to really get the best care in this circumstance. So you're going into a difficult situation, and you set your intention. Or, which is the hardest one, is actually in the middle of the chaos, when you find that, oh, geez, I'm really flustered. I'm really scared. I'm really upset. How can I come back home again, right? What's most important to me? So again, you're bringing in the idea that you're coming home to that better version of yourself, that centered, loving, clear thinking, connected version of yourself. So you're really in the middle of the chaos, coming back home again. So with that as an introduction, I'm going to suggest that you actually do this with me. I'm going to take you through a 2 or 3 minute exercise. Participate in a way that's best for you. So, you don't have to necessarily do this, or can do it in a way, it's all very safe and easy. But I like to do it because you're actually training your brain. When you practice these things, you actually change the neurocircuitry of your brain. It's like you develop like a wellspring of peace and calm, and that you can tap into that more easily when you actually practice this. So again, if you guys would do this with me, I'd appreciate it. Maybe it will settle me down for the rest of the presentation here. Okay. So first of all, I like to take a strong posture. And again, you do it in a way that's best for you. You can even do it as slouching or lying or whatever else. But I like to actually come off the back of my chair so I'm not resting there. And I put my feet flat on the floor, if that works for you. My hands on my knees. And then I take a strong posture, right? So it's what I call body up. The body has a strong posture. It sends a signal to the brain to say, I'm confident, I'm taking my seat. There's kind of a sense of nobility with this. And then the next thing I do is I bring my attention into my body. And I actually believe that actually energizes your body in some way or form. There's some of this stuff I can't prove scientifically, but I'll just tell you when I kind of believe it. So you bring your attention to the sense of your feet being grounded to the floor. So you're grounding yourself in Mother Earth, bringing your attention to your hands. And there's a sense of curiosity. What does that feel like? What does the energy around my hands feel like? The weight of the body in the chair. And then feel your spine, or kind of bring your attention, the sensations, the feelings of your spine, that kind of sense of solidity, that sense of strength. Now bring your attention to the front of your chest and the kind of the heart area. And notice what you notice there. Maybe a sense of openness or rawness or warmth or even a vulnerability. And that really does reflect our humanness. We have a strong spine, we're grounded to the earth, but there's also that sense of open-heartedness, right? Those two together. Then we practice a breath. So bringing your attention to your breath. Be very curious. Called interoception, when you watch the sensations. And now I want you to exaggerate the out breath. So it's a longer, slower, smoother out breath. Maybe breathing in for a count of 3 and breathing out for a count of 6. Nice, slow, smooth out breath. And you can even allow your mind now to relax a little bit as you're doing this slow, smooth, long out breath. Very nice. Okay, so that's the mindfulness and the breath work, the slow, smooth out breath. Now we'll generate a feeling. So imagine that you could warm your heart with a sense of care, a sense of connection. Allow your heart to warm with a kind of sense of love or kindness maybe. And sometimes that's easiest to do as you think of somebody that you love or your pet or a different time in your life when you're really connected with someone. And you allow your heart to warm, just like an element on a stove warming. You know, bring your mind to somebody in your life who's suffering in some way or form. And it could be a loved one, could be a friend, could be someone at a distance that you know at the cancer center. And again, allow your heart to open. May they find peace. May they be free from suffering. And just, it's almost like you're sending them an aspiration, a wish from your heart right into their heart. And somehow they know at a deep level that you care about them and that you want them to be well. Now think about the other wonderful people in your life, your friends, your family, your cherished colleagues. And as these comes to mind, allow your heart to open again, that they be happy, that they be free from suffering. And again, your heart is warming, just opening, and you're giving yourself a physiological relaxation response, just sending that love. Now, interestingly, send that same wonderful feeling to everybody who's joined the conference, the 300 plus people who are probably online right now, listening from all over Manitoba. Distance is not an issue. You just wish them well in their cancer journey, that they may learn in whatever way is best for them. They may grow. They may find peace. And then from that expanded state, because you're kind of giving it to yourself as you're going here, set that aspiration for yourself. What is it that you need to learn? How do you need to grow? How do you want to be in this next day and a bit? So we're connecting with so many wonderful spirits. How do you want to walk away from this conference? And let it be so as we start this conference. Just let that permeate, let that reality manifest if that's what's going to happen. And now let go of any sense of visualization and simply come back to the physical sensations of the body. The kind of sense of being grounded, your feet are grounded to the earth. You have that strong spine. And then on the next out breath, allow your mind to expand a little bit into the space here with a sense of possibility, a sense of transformation, sense of healing in some sense that can manifest as well. And recognize that your good human heart connects the two, the kind of practical, pragmatic earth stuff with this kind of aspiration, this kind of bigger vision. And just let that go. I'm going to chime the chimes to finish off this exercise. Thank you. I can feel it actually. It sounds a bit bizarre, but I feel better. Okay. So get yourself back into a relaxed position. We're going to do a little bit of these exercises throughout the talk because I want you to be participatory. It might be a little bit weird, like you're doing this stuff and the people around you are doing their thing. Okay. So I'm thinking about getting a cancer diagnosis, and what I've seen in the last 30 years now, I've been running support groups. People have different goals after a cancer diagnosis. Obviously, they want to maximize their chance of cure, longevity. Yes, that we get the physical care, the surgery, chemo, radiation, and we do what we can to actually boost that, right? So obviously we want to get cured or have great longevity. The other thing, though, is that we want to feel better, right? So the cancer can bring up so many different kind of stressful emotions and states of mind. How can we come back home and kind of feel more centered, more clear thinking, more confident, more at peace, right? So there are ways there you can learn these things. I've then learned within the last 5-10 years that people also want to be able to function better. I want my brain to work. I want the chemo fog, brain fog to go away. I want to be able to do the things that I love to do in service of something bigger, right? It's usually our relationships. We want to be healthier, stronger, happier, because then we connect more deeply with the loved ones, and we do those meaningful things in our life. So we're aiming for that. We're remembering that. We're going towards that. And I'd say that there's also an opportunity through the cancer experience, cancer journey, to actually grow psychologically and spiritually. So if that appeals to you, there's always that opportunity. I can learn from this. I can grow from this, which is a reframe within itself and builds resilience, right? So we don't have to judge the outcome as much as how am I responding? How am I choosing to live my life? How am I choosing to let my love out, my heart open to those around me? And we do this then because what was exactly Patricia was describing and Dr. Nevaratam has set up is this complete, or what I call integrative oncology. And it starts out with the information piece, understanding what's happening to you. There's the health literacy. Here's the what can you do within the medical system? What can you do outside of the medical system? That's empowerment by itself. And you get that from lots of resources, including the mentors and people who have been through the experience before. And then it's a whole half an hour talk as to how to advocate for yourself, how to get the best care, how to prepare yourself for the medical system and make sure that you're playing your role in your part and that your questions are being answered and so on. And then mostly I'm focusing then on the empowerment piece, right? And it's artificially broken down into body, mind, and spirit. Essentially, it's really one holographic picture. You influence one, you influence them all. There's no doubt about it. And the First Nations folks know that better than me for certain. Okay, so I'm advocating as the starting point, right? This is that's what we're working at. And the fantastic talks you're going to get tomorrow at the conference. So, okay, so there are a few hot themes. One of them is inflammation. I can't cover all the material. All I can say is that when our body's inflamed, it's irritated, it's releasing those chemicals that can prime cell growth, and you can't think as clear. There's lots of reasons why we want to decrease the inflammation in our body and use the inflammation when we actually need it, i.e. an infection or something practical. So what I'm talking about today, and I'm going to share with you some really good science and things that will really, quite frankly, shock you, is the anti-inflammatory lifestyle. So I'm going to talk about the science around movement and sedentarism. Diet is super big. Again, I don't have time to talk about the microbiome, which is the 100 trillion bacteria who are your friends, who you're totally reliant on, and how to kind of take care of them. So I'll give you some of that advice. We're talking about sleep science, practicing a relaxation technique. And I also put in the fact that we're human. We do like to connect. We do like to, we're wired for touch and community. And, I think we just have to recognize that that's part of our emotional needs, and we need to continue to work towards that. And then doing things that nourish your soul, right? Going for that walk in the woods. So, okay. So you would probably know that if you are more active, and I use active movement, exercise interchangeably, so I don't kind of scare people into thinking you have to go to the weight room every day, although that would be helpful too. But essentially, when we're active, it actually changes the emotional content. You're really brain-derived growth factor, anti-anxiety. It's like being active, doing something actually changes the chemistry within your brain. And there's the resilience piece. If you can change those chemicals through that activity, you actually protect yourself from getting too down, too anxious, or feeling disconnected. So there's the science. I'm going to take you through a little bit more of the granularity. So there's something called myokines. There's a whole pharmacy of incredibly positive chemicals in your muscles. However, and those are the muscles are actually endocrine organs. You don't get to use that pharmacy, that incredibly positive pharmacy, unless you move your muscles, unless you actually exercise. So do yourself a favor. Like, you can't put this in a pill, and how incredibly important flexing those muscles, using those muscles is. So it's really literally dozens of chemicals that influence our physical and mental health, whether it's the heart, the immune system, your brain, blood sugar metabolism. And there's those data that it actually shows to help kill cancer cells. It primes the immune system. And I've got a slide there in a second. They also call those chemicals the molecules of hope, right? So the lactic acid, when you think lactic acid, oh, it's burning your muscle, you actually get a little bit of lactic acid when you first work out. The lactic acid goes boom right to your brain, and you actually feel less anxious right from the get-go. Boom, settles you. It's like, oh, okay, I'm okay. I can work on this. And then there's the rewiring. The guys that were given a gym membership in Australia, within 8 weeks, they actually had some changes in their brain that was visible on these new scans. And those rewiring are to sections of the brain that are related to emotions, the challenge response, because we are going to run through challenges, and it's an antidepressant in some way. You can't read this slide, I know, but I just want to say, here's the science showing that when you exercise, immune function, hormones change, less inflammation, changes in vascular, changes in gene expression, all sorts of other growth factors, influences how the fat cells put out their chemicals. This is the pharmacy. This is what we want to do. I really like this author. She's a Stanford professor. Kelly McGonigal also wrote the book Upside of Stress. Really good author. And so I'm just tapping into her work here. So she basically writes, and she's tapping into the science, that even if you do 3 minutes of exercise, 3 minutes in a row. In fact, guys, I'd ask you to do right now, we're not going to do 3 minutes of exercise, but if you can, if you want to, if you just stand up for a second and maybe just do like 10 mini squats. You don't have to go very far, and we certainly don't want you to hurt yourself, but just do something, maybe a little stretch upwards as you go. So you do that for 3 minutes, you actually change your biochemistry. And especially if you are feeling anxious, feeling down, you can actually change your brain, change the chemicals in your brain. 3 minutes. Now, interestingly, so just 3 minutes makes the difference. How do you amplify the feel better effect? We're talking 3 minutes or more feeling better. So how can you ramp it up? This obviously was, this was taking a woman start dancing in your kitchen. It was probably a pandemic program. Anyways, I just thought that was such a great picture. Love her face there. So a couple things. Turn on the YouTube, play a video, music from your youth, So you're adding music and you're kind of dancing, and that by itself creates a more joy, more energy, more enthusiasm. Secondly, to get more effects from exercise, do it with other people. So it's what they call collective, right? And so we are again wired as we're exercising with people. We feel more connected. We feel more sense of trust. We feel less isolated. There's the empowerment feeling. Back to CancerCare. Lastly, get outside and see the natural world. So even if you're in an apartment, you can still look at the sky, for instance, right? So you're getting outside, seeing what the natural world is, maybe seeing some trees if you can. There might be a few of those in Manitoba. So get out there, do something. All right. So then if you go beyond the 3 minutes, there's something called the persistence high. So that's with 20 minutes of reasonably more intense exercise. And that releases the hormones, but it's residual, right? And so you get these kind of ongoing benefits if you go beyond 20 minutes. And I think that's why if you exercise first thing in the morning, you're less likely to feel anxious throughout the day itself. So you get a reset of the chemicals. And yes, endocannabinoids, it sounds exactly like you know what, and that's exactly the chemicals that are being released naturally within your brains, endorphins helping decrease pain and so on. So it gives you more energy, more likely to persist, less pain, decrease negative emotions, right? So you're changing your chemistry by doing something for yourself. And from an evolutionary perspective, I just think that you're more likely to stay connected and feel connected with others, because essentially what's happened is you've gone out for the big hunt and you brought back the mammal, and then you've worked super hard, and the tribes that actually were willing to share at that point, right after some hard work, were the tribes that succeeded in the long term. So we're wired to connect after some hard work, and it feels good to connect as well. The persistence high. The other one is I kind of think it from a symbolic perspective. So you see it as a sense of purpose or a sense of accomplishment. So you can actually, for instance, if you strength train, I'm lifting those weights, and you say, I can feel my own strength. It's like your own agency. It's your own nobility. It's your own strength. So strength training can be seen that way. Or as you power walk, you can see that as a journey, a sense of making progress on the cancer journey. And you can talk to yourself, I can persist, I can take on a challenge. So the other one is that you're focusing all the frustrations and difficult stuff into something that really makes a difference. So it's putting that energy into something that can empower you, again, as you can. So exercise. Essentially, more is better, I think, would be to a point. Obviously, we don't want people running marathons every day, but more is better, generally speaking. Strength training, I'm going to talk to you about, flexibility, coordination, lots of different ways to exercise, including being at home, watching that YouTube, walking around the kitchen. You can do something really to help yourself get stronger. Okay, so how do we do it? How do you get out there? Like, what are the tips and tricks that trick your psyche into actually doing more? Make it fun. Right? Do the thing. You don't have to go to the gym if you don't like going to the gym. Do the fun stuff for you. Make it social. Having somebody else to do it with kind of create some accountability. Definitely want to create a routine. We're going to talk about that shortly. But really, honestly, I'm going to just have to there's a role for discipline. You need to do the work if you're able and so on. But do the work. Okay, so that's big picture exercise. Now, strength training is a benefit on top of just the aerobic stuff that I've been talking about so far. So you get extra benefit by actually doing the strength training, right? Which is essentially creating resistance so that the muscles get bigger and stronger, essentially. So they get bigger. So strength training is in addition to just doing the power walk type of stuff. And it's funny because when you strength train, it actually changes the neurocircuitry everywhere in the body. It's almost like you do bicep curls, but that actually innervates the muscles in your legs, for instance, and vice versa. And then there's the very practical things of not falling and suffering an injury. Obviously, and you guys talked about prehabilitation, getting stronger prior to the big operation allows you to recover more quickly. Stronger muscles protect you. It's kind of weird. I have some arthritis in my knees, but it's actually better that the quads and calves are strong, and it'll protect those joints. Decrease arthritis, decrease pain, increases bone mineral density, which I think we suffer from, we Canadians, with our lack of sunlight. Anyway, so the strength training pressures the bone responds by getting a little bit thicker, which is actually a good thing. I think this might be a picture of me when I get older, because I run on the skinny side, and the fact is our muscles do decrease in size over the years. Men go through andropause, have less testosterone, and then you think of the cancer diagnosis, and we can get very weak and tired, which would be kind of expected in the midst of treatment. And we can have a worse diet, so we're not getting enough protein, et cetera, et cetera. So we're at risk. So wherever possible, keep yourself stronger. It changes fat metabolism, partly because if you have more muscle, it actually burns energy as what they call basal metabolic rate, meaning just on the day-to-day, without actually doing anything, your muscles are kind of burning off some of those calories, right? And as you get stronger, the workouts get easier, the benefits get more. It's an upward spiral of positive stuff. So the calories and non-workout times, the sugar goes into the muscle more easily. There's a lot of people at risk of like pre-diabetes or blood sugar problems. And so by having a bit more muscle mass and muscle strength trumps fatness. It really does. Fitness trumps fatness. So you burn off the fat more easily is the point. Strengthening. So we're talking about, this is an additional benefit beyond just aerobic exercise. Decreased inflammation. And again, inflammation is a precursor to cancer. It's priming the cells, causing the damage, but also puts people at risk of cardiovascular disease, having a heart attack, right? So we decrease our blood pressure by strength training, bad fats, decrease stress, and so therefore less risk of a heart attack, less risk of a stroke, right? You can survive your cancer, be cured of that, but run into some other major problem. Why not do it now and kind of take care of yourself for the long term? Brain health. Brain-derived growth factors. When we strength train, in addition to the aerobic stuff, you actually increase the brain cell activity, new neurocircuitry. Brain-derived growth factor allows that brain to grow more easily. And so we can think more clearly, learn more easily, which is one of your goals, right? You want your nog and your brain to function at its best there. Decreases the risk of dementia. Improves mood. There's the myokines again, right? Lactic acid is giving you that anti-anxiety effect. So big picture, right? Because you want to tap into expertise. Every step of the way, I'm going to say to you, who's the expert, within the medical system or outside of the medical system that you can tap into and make sure that you're getting good guidance for your situation, right? So then when you think about the psychosocial specialists, they're providing expertise as well. But so for strength training, I think it's better to kind of get that first lesson, even that first hour, to get the right technique down. And then you slowly ramp it up. You're going to expect your muscles to be a little bit sore. A couple of days later, you would train maybe every 2 days or every 3 days, allowing the muscles to recover. You actually are breaking down the tissue a little bit. 30 minutes, all major muscle groups, typically each week. And it's usually 2 sets of 8 to 12 reps. We have a program, an online program that, for instance, this is workout A for Mondays, where it's elastic bands or body weight, essentially whole body, right? Core, muscles, legs, shoulders, all that stuff. Okay, there it is. So strength training is the first one for you folks who actually want to make a difference. Secondly, sedentarism is the new smoking. Sitting is the new smoking. Sitting too much is not good for your body, especially if you do it more than about 2 hours in a row. But I'm going to say 5 on the hour. Stand up and stretch and do something 5 on the hour. Okay. So defining too much, is it more than 2 hours in a row, 3 hours in a row, 6 hours in a row? But really, you have to stretch. There's a change in the biochemistry. This is the issue. So they did this study of 17,000 Canadians over 12 years, and 50% increase in all-cause mortality. Look at this. A cancer journal showed increased risk of colon cancer, lung cancer, endometrial cancer, even when they adjusted for people doing their workouts, right? So Even if you do your power walk in the morning, but you're sitting for 8 hours straight, not moving your muscle, afterward, you've lost the benefit. You're really cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, all this stuff. Need to get up, need to stretch 5 minutes on the hour. And here's a kind of complicated diaphragm. You kind of see in this inner circle that's pointing to a whole bunch of different tissues, different parts of your body, right? And then that gets translated into what you see on the outside, what you experience, what we're at risk of, right? Obesity, colon cancer, cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension, back pain, right? So this is real. You're actually changing the chemistry in your body if you're sitting on and on and on and on. Okay. I hope I'm not ranting too much, but I'm really passionate. This is something you can do. This is something you can teach your friends and family. Here's an interesting study. So people who sat for more than 6 hours per day, controlling for all the other things, lost 4.8 years of life, which converted into 21.8 minutes per hour spent, which is more than smoking a cigarette. So how do you sit less, right? And so it's hard, right? Because we're watching a movie with our loved ones, we're doing our emails, all that type of stuff, is to be creative and to use that discipline and your true care and compassion for yourself. So there's some great apps that send an alarm to you every hour. Stand up 5 minutes on the hour. I like, for instance, whenever I'm speaking on the phone, I always try to stand up, right? If I'm talking on the phone, I want to stand up, or walking up the stairs. The other one is, you can see here, this woman using a stand-up desk. And I like the ones that are adjustable, because you need to kind of build up an endurance to standing more often. Okay, everybody, while we're looking at that, can you stretch? I know it's weird. You're there watching your video by yourself. Touch your toes, pick an apple from the trees, stretch your body, shake it out, shake your legs. Okay. And even throughout the conference for this next day, try to, at each break, maybe get up and stretch, look away from the computer, upwards, outwards. Okay, I'm just going to talk about diet a little bit, because it's very important, especially related to our gut. But I think about having cancer cells and not wanting slow growing cells in the body to turn into fast growing cells. And so the antioxidants mop up the chemicals and the stimulating, damaging and stimulating chemicals that can kind of slow down, or even maybe help reverse those processes. The other one is the sugary stuff, the sugary pop, even the fruit juices. A lot of these drinks really do cause a spike in the blood sugar. So you drink a pop and your blood sugar goes super high. Your body throws in the insulin to try to get the glucose into the cells, but it also pumps out other chemicals like insulin, like growth factor, that prime cancer cell growth. We don't want that to happen. We want to change the soup to change the cell conditions. And ultimately, diet does improve immune function, allows you to get through the conventional treatments more easily, right? So it's really that integrative perspective. So again, it's probably a 20-minute talk, or maybe more like an hour-long talk, of what is the healthy diet. Eat food. I'll talk about that in a moment, not chemicals. Mostly plants, not too much. So I think about eating my fruits and veggies first, fills my stomach, stops me from overeating. Complex carbs, so you're not getting that spike in the sugar, which is hard. Proteins and fats, more from non-meat sources. So certainly less red meat. Fiber, you're probably fiber deficient more than anything. You want the natural fiber from the natural foods. I can't emphasize that one enough. I like this idea of real foods, multiple types of food at each meal, because you want that kind of combinations of the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals to come together, the amino acids from the proteins to come together and support the tissue all at the same time, and not eating the one thing. We do need to supplement with vitamin D, right? We are in Canada 10 months per year. You probably need to take your vitamin D. I'm going to talk about how to get that one, or at least get your blood levels measured. And ultimately, this is about the empowerment piece of slow transition to a healthier diet by testing the dishes that you like, because we want you to enjoy your diet. We want you to feel good, feel strong after the meal, think more clearly. My tennis coach is like, he said he turned into pescatarian, which is basically fish and healthy stuff. He said I could think much more clearly. And we're talking about a 30-year-old guy who's thinking I can think more clearly with a change in diet there. And ultimately be kind to your gut, because those 100 trillion friends that you have are incredibly important. We want to feed those guys. Okay, this is very disturbing. This is what I've been reading about recently, and we need to be aware of this issue of what they call ultra-processed foods. Essentially, the food industry maximizes profit by making the food essentially taste addictive and increase consumption, which increases their profit. And that the marketing is trying to get you to do that by making you feel good about products that necessarily aren't good for you. And so there's this whole kind of scientific cycle of how they do that to maximize their profits. So I'm sorry, that's just the truth of the matter. I want you guys to know about it. So this Brazilian guy figured out that in the 1990s, there was a sudden epidemic of obesity in Brazil, and people were eating the same thing, but they were eating now ultra-processed foods, and that's what caused the problem. And so he came up with this classification. And so if you eat from these first three categories, that's fine. We have to process our foods a little bit, right? We've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. We want to kind of cook and so on. The issue is the ultra-processed foods, all those extra substances and chemicals that are not good for us. And we actually don't even know from a scientific perspective how it is that it disrupts our microbiome. Those bacteria irritates our gut and causes lots of problems. So what is an ultra-processed food? Or I call it an ultra-processed food-like substance. Essentially, it's that food-like substance that has a lot of ingredients, and there's no kind of cutoff. Use extracts from other foods, so they're kind of processing that side. Ingredients essentially that you wouldn't have in your kitchen or your pantry, and that you can't make this food yourself. You might make a healthy version of it, but really it's like almost everything, including the supermarket bread, the breakfast cereals, most yogurts, the energy bars, the food that's wrapped in plastic, like the pizzas and the lasagnas and stuff like that. Please, folks, I'm sorry. This is maybe disturbing, but I want you to know the truth and like try to work with it. And you're not going to be able to avoid all of these kind of, additions. But the emulsifiers, for instance, they're learning more and more that it's kind of ripping off the lining of the gut and causing the gut to have like a leaky gut syndrome, causing an inflammation. So there are these different kind of chemicals that are changing the microbiome, irritating the gut, and causing a whole bunch of other problems because we're eating it. So I'm pointing you to look at the labels and stay away from looking at the top, which is called the micronutrients. How much fat, how much cholesterol, how much protein, how much sugar. That's how much fiber. That's not as important because you can put all that stuff in and add all these extra chemicals. Like what's this one? Azodicarbonamide. Holy smokes, I'm eating that as well. So you read the labels. Look, if you don't even recognize what that chemical is, you don't really know actually is how it's going to influence your body. Canada Food Guide listed a whole bunch of things, including most of our ice creams. They're made for distribution and taste, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't read from the list, just to say I've taken a picture from a product from a popular store and I blew it up. Yeah, this is no can do in my mind. The problem is in Canada, I suspect is the same thing as say it's probably 50 or 60% of our caloric intake. Kids are getting like 75% of their intake through these ultra processed food like substances, like the breakfast cereals, et cetera, et cetera. And that really can affect their brain function, et cetera, et cetera. Affects their appetites, puts them at risk of diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is the takeaway then, right? There's the food-like substances associated with poor mental health. It's associated with cancer. There's a slight risk of cancer. If something increases the risk of cancer, I would want you to avoid it. Diabetes, neurocognitive problems like Alzheimer's, other medical conditions, right? So you're not going to be able to avoid it. I just think you can improve your diet. I'm just going to give you a quick, just a quick study here. It was so interesting. So they took 20 essentially overweight adults and they put them in the hospital or into an enclosed environment for 28 days, randomly assigned them to a healthy diet or ultra-processed food diet for 2 weeks. And then they crossed over, then they switched over to the other diet. And the unhealthy diet contained about 80% of the calories from ultra-processed foods. The healthy diet had 80% of calories, for essentially like whole foods. And it wasn't just like, celery and, bananas in the healthy group and, chips and pop in the ultra-processed food. They try to make it tasty on both sides, like a breakfast cereal, a muffin that was ultra-processed versus made out of whole foods. They added some more fiber into the ultra-processed food guide. They added more kind of fruit into the whole food sides. They make it a little bit more sugary, et cetera, et cetera. And it was matched essentially for caloric density, macronutrients, fiber, et cetera. So, and interestingly, so the groups both felt like they liked the diet. They liked the taste of the diet. They felt like they were full at the end of the meal, et cetera, et cetera. So the groups actually liked the food. But the ultra-processed food group ate 500 kcals more per day than when they eat the whole foods. And during that 2 weeks, the ultra-processed food guys gained 2 pounds, whereas the healthy group absolutely lost 2 pounds. And they had access to as much food as they wanted. And so we don't know why there was weight gain. It's probably because those ultra-processed foods are calorically dense. They're softer. It's easy to get the kind of calories into you even before you know you're full, right? And so you end up overeating. So then there's could be lots of other explanations, but it is a scary point. I'm just going to, again, make this point that when you take the ultra-processed foods, you eat that as your main part of your diet, you're changing the microbiome, the 100 trillion bacteria that keep you alive, essentially. And the good part, and it can strip the mucosa, and the added fiber is not the same as whole food fiber. We really need to feed those bacteria the real thing that's kind of much more complex, gets into the deep bowel, et cetera, et cetera. But if you actually change your diet over, you can actually change your microbiome. So there is some good news out of this story, is that you can get healthier by continuing to eat more whole foods. Okay, so that it's not what you eat, but when you eat. So I'm trying to empower you with the kind of the biggest ideas that you can actually use on the day-to-day that is actually going to change your health. So obviously, next is what I call time-restricted eating. Some people call it intermittent fasting. I don't like that word fasting. It sounds like you're kind of denying yourself somehow, or counting calories, or all that stuff. So it's timing, not content. And just to explain the physiology, when you eat a meal, the kind of the sugars, the glucose, all that stuff goes into the cells, but also gets kind of stored into the liver. So that's the kind of the sugary side. The fats go into the cells and stored in the fat cells. And then when you stop eating, you start burning off all that stuff. So the liver kind of gives off its glucose. Eventually, you run out of that kind of glucose. And then the fat cells actually have to start producing ketones, which is actually what you want to have happen. You want to get into what they call ketosis. But I also want to be very clear here. It's not just being like a ketogenic diet. It's actually really important that you cycle in and out of the sugar side and the ketosis side every day, 24 hours. So it's not like you're denying yourself the rest of the macronutrients. It's just that you need to get into ketosis, i.e. being hungry at least once per 24 hours. The reason being is that those ketones actually change how the body works, including kind of mopping up the kind of bits, like the bits and garbage that are causing inflammation, but also the kind of weak cells, including cancer cells, for instance. So as you get into ketosis, then that you kind of start eating up, cleaning up, allowing your stomach to repair, and it decreases inflammation, right? You don't want to be kind of constantly irritating your gut by having that acid wash over the inside lining of your stomach all the time. Okay, and so the idea is it's not just our brain cells that go through this circadian rhythm. We actually, eating during the day and not eating at night, lowers blood sugar and insulin levels and all this other good stuff in terms of the metabolism within your body. So the takeaway for each and every one of you as you're listening now, try not to eat at least for the first hour after waking. Yes, we all have different scenarios where you might have to do this. I'm just saying, generally speaking, if you can, start to explore these ideas, and try not to eat for the last 2 or 3 hours before going to sleep. And then we're going to talk about how long you need to be kind of off of food. And so, when you first wake up in the morning, you can have coffee or tea, but just don't have any calories in it, right? So no sugar, no milk, et cetera, during the non-eating time. And so you eventually can train your body over even a 4-month period to slowly get better and better and better at not feeling so hungry when you wake up in the morning. So, so month 1, for instance, you might not eat for 10 hours overnight, right? So you might, eat at 8 o'clock at night and then 6 o'clock in the morning. What might be the period of time, but you're slowly ramping that up so that, more and more eating for a more time restricted period and longer. We're probably trying to get out to maybe 12, 14 hours of not eating is probably healthier than the shorter time. So you're slowly building up your capacity to do this. And yes, you are going to be hungry at times, right? So if you're trying to get up to 12 and 14 hours, and then you might be a little more hungry first in the morning, you might be a little more tired, but all of this stuff actually goes away after even just a few weeks, right? So because your body gets smart at metabolizing the ketones more easily. This is the benefit. This is what I want you to walk away with. When you give your body a chance to kind of clean itself up, it actually allows the organs to regenerate, which is just incredible. Heart, kidneys, your immune function works better. You have better glucose tolerance to the foods you do have. It promotes weight loss, but you're not necessarily losing muscle. You can even work out during this time, right? Helps prevent cancer. Ding, 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 ding. You hear any health-related activity that helps prevent cancer, you can do that. Stimulates brain function. Imagine that you can actually allow your brain to regenerate or at least get healthier with something as simple as this. Okay, I think this is the last major health habit that I want to talk about, but there is some really good science around how to sleep. Matthew Walker is world-renowned research expert. I'm tapping into his side. And what I'm suggesting to you is that that it's how you approach the healing journey that actually influences the healing journey. So it's this kind of feeling like, I really care for myself. I really love myself, and I'm willing to do what I need to do with a peaceful process. So you want to make sure that you're still kind of manifesting a sense of calm and peace as you're making these changes. So interestingly, as we stay awake, these kind of chemicals start to build up in our brain that's actually a little bit toxic towards our brain. And there's a remarkable system called the lymphatic system. In the rest of the body, it's called lymphatic. In your brain, it's called glymphatic, which actually during sleep allows you to flush out those metabolites that are starting to really irritate the brain. And so during the non-REM cycle early in the night, you start to get that. You get the big brain waves that kind of flushes this. And then interestingly, sleep allows us to remember and consolidate learning and memories, promotes creativity. And then lastly, in the morning, if you have REM sleep, rapid eye movements, essentially when you're dreaming, it allows an emotional processing, right? So you can kind of relive that difficult emotional moment without having the kind of the emotional kick to it. So there's a kind of a psychotherapy, self-psychotherapy in the middle of the night. Ultimately, we're aiming for the sleep part of it, not just being in bed, sleep part of it, 7 to 9 hours. I think more is better, essentially. This is important as well. So there's the lymphatic system, right? So the blood vessels are opening up. It's allowing the kind of water to go from the bloodstream into the space around the cells, and then that gets kind of mopped up by the vein system and the different pathways there. This is the issue. Again, here's the empowerment piece. If you can help yourself sleep better, then you decrease your risk of these things, right? So heart disease, blood pressure, death, ding, 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 cancer again, right? So the air stewards, the lovely, I guess, women who are on the planes, making sure that we're safe and so on, they have a higher risk of breast cancer, for instance, especially if they fly east and west and out of their time zones compared with north south. So there's Alzheimer's. So really, it's the other pillar of good health, including our mental health. Okay, so I'd also say, when do you need to see an expert? I've listed a few of these issues. Like if you're really tired and really not sleeping and can't concentrate and can't function, then maybe there's a major problem there. And I'm always asking you to see your physician, your family doctor, your specialist, talking to the team, talking to the nurses. They can tap you in. You don't ask, you may not know that there's a program like the Center of Hope could be helping you in some way or form. And just to say that we have a natural 24-hour clock called the circadian rhythm. Melatonin is released up night. There's these different phases of the sleep, and then we kind of wake up when we have a highest alertness. We limit our caffeine. We're going to talk about that, dimming the lights. So you can tap into this age-old rhythm using science. So the habits. So generally speaking, we're decreasing our stress levels, decreasing our anxiety levels, living our life in a more peaceful, loving, positive state, right? There's the stay in your frontal lobe scenario. And all these other health habits, exercise, meditation, reframing, we're going to talk about in a moment, help you stay in that center state that ultimately you'll sleep better. And then there's a whole technique. They used to call it sleep hygiene. It's also called healthy sleep habits. You're essentially training your brain. Your brain can learn how to fall asleep more easily. And so what I say is create the conditions in which you're more likely to have a better night's sleep, which is probably all we can do. Number one, create a routine, right? At the same time, same activities. I'm going around, I'm turning off the lights, I'm locking the doors, I'm tucking my wife with a blanket, I'm turning off my light. It's just like every night that's happening. You can even set a lights out alarm so that I'm starting that process at 9:45. I'm going to do that routine. My alarm's gone at 9:45 so that I can turn off the light at 10 o'clock at night. Write down your worries. Might be an easy one as well. If you're perseverating over some issue, you can write down the issues in your mind in a book, set it aside. It's going to be there tomorrow morning. You don't have to worry and figure it out tonight. So you get up at the same time every day, that same routine, even on the weekends, every day. Stay away from the stimulants, right? So we're not going to watch TV or social media or horror film or television news just before we go to sleep, right? You're staying away from the heavy meal or exercise, for instance. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 8 hours. So I would suggest enjoy your coffee in the morning, and certainly before noon, because 2 half times later, you're down to a quarter cup of coffee in your system. Okay. The sedatives don't work. Sleeping pills, no. Yes, you might fall asleep more easily, but you don't get the regenerative benefits of the sleep. Alcohol is not helpful as well to try to get you to sleep. You're losing out on all those processes. We mimic the lights, getting shades. I like to wear eye shades, especially in the summer. And then first thing in the morning, you go outside or just even look out the window, because that has a different spectrum of light that actually stimulates the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Oh, doesn't that sound good? It's part of the brain that kind of sends it to the pineal gland and rest. It says, okay, 12 hours from now, send the signal to start feeling sleepy, okay? Ideal bedroom conditions, dark, quiet, cool, comfortable. We lose a couple degrees of centigrade in our body core at the start of the night. That's why we want to be cool there. If you have insomnia, the data suggests that if you're like completely awake for 20 minutes or longer, you need to go to a different room, for instance, do something peaceful, because you don't want to associate your bedroom with insomnia. You want to associate with feeling sleepy, right? Practice a relaxation technique. Try a peaceful activity. Self-talk, again, this is about, you want to be smart from kind of psychological perspective and how you talk to yourself with a sense of kind of kindness and wisdom. You say, yes, this is tough. I'm having enough sleep, but I can function. I'll do my best to sleep in the days to come. I can do this. It's the positive self-talk that's part of this. Okay, melatonin. Really shouldn't be taking it, especially chronically. It's good if you're changing time zones, for instance, but I don't necessarily recommend it. Are naps good? I think so. If you do it the right way, which is, for instance, before 2 p.m. for a shorter period of time, just get enough REM. I think there's some good enough science to suggest that boosts mood, decreases blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's a training. It's not for everybody. I'm just offering my suggestions. And ultimately, let love be the motivation. I love myself. I want to take care of myself one step at a time. I can't do everything. I can't do everything in this talk. I'm just going to learn, experiment, figure out what works for me. Okay, there's a whole science around practicing a relaxation technique. And I think it's a good time now. I want you to do this one with me. It's 2 little inhales and then like a sigh. And again, two little inhales. 2 little inhales. That by itself, the sighing and the longer, slower, smoother out breath teaches the brain to relax. You're tapping into that system. We're going to use that in a moment. But when you practice meditation, you're actually innervating the left prefrontal lobe, which is associated with positive emotions, overlies the irritable brain. It kind of dampens down those emotional energies. Look, it boosts immune function, decreases inflammation. Practicing something in which you're letting go of the kind of chattering mind as much as you can, because it's still going to be there, and allowing your body to actually really relax is powerful. It really is. And it doesn't have to be a pure, meditation, et cetera, et cetera. It can be qigong, guided visualization, yoga. Again, in the exercises in which you bring your attention back into the body. Okay. I want to talk to you about how to ingrain some habits, because there's a science to this. And BJ Fogg is a Stanford professor who's, is kind of world leading, that we can use the kind of habit loop of cue. It's noon. I'm going to go to the cafeteria. I'm going to hang out with my friends. That's going to be fun. And that becomes a routine that becomes automatized. So brain centers. We start, and what BJ is saying is, you want to create a new habit, you want to kind of change a new lifestyle, start with one easy habit, like build some success, small and easy, like making it so darn easy that it's like the habit is certainly less than 2 minutes. So for instance, I'm going to use the example of taking my vitamin B12. My wife and I have to take B12 and vitamin D first thing in the morning. So I visualize exactly what has to happen, including that moment when I reach out for my toothbrush, which is the prime or the prompt for me, the trigger for me to actually do this. And here's a picture of my vitamin D against my clean kitchen counter. Obviously, we clean this one up, but you can see first thing in the morning, I'm reaching out for my toothbrush, and that's the prompt to say, no, reach over to the vitamin D and the B12. And then we usually hand each other that, take a drink, gets in. So that's now a habit. BJ Fogg's model, you see in the top right-hand corner, behavior happens when there's motivation, ability, and trigger. And if the motivation is high enough and the activity is easy enough to do, then you're likely to do it. And so I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the bottom right-hand corner of this curve, just above the blue line, is the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is to make it extremely easy to do, so that even when you have low motivation, you're still likely to do the behavior. It's tiny habits. And he uses a habit stack, right? After I reach out for my toothbrush, I will grab the vitamin D and B12 and hand it to me and my wife, right? So there's a format to this tiny habit, and you can do anything that you're doing kind of regularly, like stepping on the scale or starting your morning coffee, tidying up an item, washing your face, starting the dishwasher, walking out the door. It's going to be a great day. First feet hit the ground. I'm going to have a great day somehow, or I'm going to make the best of this day. It's like an automatic habit that kind of sets you up, like setting the intention, existing habit, tiny new habit. Uses the reward system. So this is the other thing. It's not this repetition that allows you to ingrain a new habit. It's actually how you feel. And so you want to actually trick yourself into feeling good. It sounds ridiculous that I'm going to trick myself into feeling good for taking my vitamin D. But sure enough, that's what I do. For the first whatever month or two, I would get out the vitamin D, put it on the counter, and go, woohoo, I'm awesome. This is great. Bingo. Do a mini dance, whatever. So it looks ridiculous. However, my brain remembers that good feeling. And so now I don't have to celebrate anymore because it's automated into the system. So celebration is part of the tiny habits technique. And then you can also practice celebrating on cue. So yes, I can do it. Okay, so habit stacking, making habits stick, you can do it. Typically, what it's reading here is the first 8 hours of the day, your brain is more likely to learn that. Exercise seems to help the habit stick. Okay, so I'm going to take you through an example of a walking routine. So you're going to set yourself up for a 3-minute walk. You can do it, right? 3 minutes, that's ridiculously easy. That's exactly what you want for the mornings when you're not feeling so motivated. I can just walk to the end of the street and back. You take an existing activity, like I'm getting home from work, I'm turning the key. That's my cue to say I'm going to put on my walking shoes and go for a walk now. Or if I want to walk first thing in the morning, when I take that step down the stair or cross into the kitchen or something like that, that's my cue to say, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to walk for 3 minutes. Now, you will likely walk for much further than 3 minutes, but you don't want to change your expectation. You always want to set it so easy that you will succeed every time, and you will do way more than 3 minutes, right? So make it easy. Celebrate at the end. So, right, you like put on your shoes. Yeah, I'm awesome. I can do this. And you're going for your walk. And then just when you finish your walk as well, you're kind of walking back into your house, your apartment, or wherever you're at. You're like, yeah, I did. I went for a 3-minute walk or the 45-minute walk or whatever. So you're like, yeah. And so you feel like, oh, that makes me feel good. I'm more likely to do it the next time around. And ultimately, that helps to change your attitude. And you can change your attitude to say, I'm the type of person who walks every day. Or, and then you really get into identity, I'm a power walker now, right? So you change how you look at yourself by practicing. All right. I'm just going to, for less, we're going to go for about 10 more minutes maximum. I'm going to talk about stress and the stress response and what you can do from a kind of psychological perspective. So you can see on this graph, if you're too mellow, you don't perform very well. If you're super stressed, you don't perform very well. And so we have to identify two parts of the curve. One part of the curve is to get yourself, when you're feeling super stressed, up into the kind of middle of the curve. And if you get really good at understanding that stress is actually helpful, then you bump yourself up to the upper curve. But we're just going to do the lower one. And the first point is to be mindful of when you're feeling really stressed. And we all have different cues. And so I'm going to ask you, how do you experience stress? So imagine the last time when you were really kind of freaked out, stressed, upset. What happened in your body? Right? And there could be lots of different things, like the heart pounds, and the breathing gets working, you get pains in your muscles and nasty stomach and sweaty palms. Like, so that could be the cue. It's like, oh, I'm wound up because I can feel myself really stressed here. Or you could have emotional symptoms, right? And so what could those be? How do you feel emotionally when you're super stressed, overwhelmed? And so it could be anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, scared, worried, wanting to cry, or dissociated, feeling numb. So again, that could be the cue to say, oh, I'm a little bit irritable here right now. What happens to your thinking? Most people start to get foggy. They can't think as clearly, or they get fixated, narrow, very kind of closed in the cognitive loop. So again, seeing that pattern within your mind could say, oh, I'm working myself up now. What do you think? So it's like the content. If you're reading a script of everything you've thought in the last 7 days, how would you know from the words that you were stressed at that point? And so oftentimes it's blaming, like naming somebody else, self, life, others, like I'm an idiot or life is unfair. Or if I'm swearing in my mind, then I know I'm also getting myself upset. Or if I'm labeling, this is totally unfair, that guy's such an idiot. Those are, again, cues to suggest that you've wound yourself up. You're in the stress state. And yes, the stress state can be helpful, and you're still going to use the information in that stress state. But typically, if you settle yourself down, you can think more clearly and make a better decision. Okay. What do you do when anxiety flares? Okay, guys, I want you to actually stand up for me in this one. If you want to, again, it's whatever is best for you. And you're imagining that you're in a very stressful situation, but you don't have to snatch the child from underneath the car. So I want you to imagine that you can press the pause button in the situation. And then the next thing I want you to do, you can put your hands in your lower abdomen if you want. But I want you now to be very curious about the physical sensations within your body. What do you feel right now? Right now, experience this. Now, what you're doing is something called interoception, which means it's the capacity to watch your own body. And the great thing about that is you're letting go of the catastrophizing thoughts about all the bad things that could happen, and you're actually putting your attention into the physicality of your body. And that starts the settling of the stress reaction. I want you to do the slow out breaths that we practiced earlier. Nice, slow. Using your mindfulness of the sensations in your body. Slow yourself down. Allow yourself to return to center. Okay, from that state, then you're going to talk to yourself. I can cope with this situation. I'm going to take one step at a time. I've run into this difficulty before. I can cope again. I have the resilience and strength. Resilience, there it is. Building resilience to get through the situation. Okay, so the steps are let go of trying to plan and everything and just kind of settle physically by being curious. The breathing technique actually really helps. And then you can reassure yourself, I can get through this. I want to just take you through one example of reframing, because this is a very important skill. And I'm almost offering a potpourri of all these techniques that you can learn more about, right? So this is called reframing or cognitive behavioral therapy. And the idea is that you can change how you look at yourself, at the world, at life, and that will change how you feel, the thoughts influencing the emotions. And we typically use a 3-column technique that you see here. So you see the situation, just the real world situation. And then we often have thoughts about the situation in the left column that don't necessarily reflect the truth fully. It's like usually exaggerated. And then we can think about, if we think that way, what would happen? And ultimately, you want to use the wise and compassionate part of your brain and be creative and realistic about how you want to respond psychologically. And so I'll take you through a single example. So I'm imagining this woman or man, they've had their big operation. They're on chemotherapy right now. They're due up for 6 cycles in total. They're kind of halfway done, and they're tired and they're emotionally irritable. And there's no judgment there. That's what happens when people go through chemotherapy. They have fatigue and their brains change the chemistry so they can be more irritable, right? So that's just the truth of the situation. But on top of that, that person is going to have this thought. The thought is, it's no use. I don't have the strength to get through this. So they put a judgment on top of a reality. And if they can catch themselves using that type of language, then they can go through the middle column. So how would they feel if they talked to themselves that way? Well, how would you feel? Like, it's no use. It's that kind of despairing, depression, down type of feeling, right? You're getting yourself down. How does my body feel? Well, that actually gives me less energy. It's actually kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't get through this. Is it helpful or harmful? No, it is not helpful to be saying I don't have the strength to do this. And there are some circumstances where you would want to stop chemotherapy. That's the right decision. But in this one, it's like they're just kind of talking themselves, negatively. How is it exaggerated or irrational? I guess that's how we go at this. Kind of like, if a lawyer was going to argue against this, what would they say? It's no use? Is that true? Well, actually, with each course of chemotherapy, they're bumping themselves up in terms of the chance of cure. So that's actually not true. I don't have the strength to get through this. Well, actually, you are getting through this. You may be feeling like you're trying to live all your chemotherapy in the next 5 minutes, but you're actually slowly getting through this chemotherapy. And then lastly, what would the good friend say to this person if they said that, right? So really, it's like the good friend within your own brain, that wise grandmother, is going to acknowledge. They're going to look at the situation from a bigger perspective. They're going to be encouraging, right? Yeah, this is difficult. I hear you. Like, this is a tough time. I can see how you'd be really tired and so on. But you are getting through this, and you're probably tired now. You'll probably feel better tomorrow. And, you've been through tough situations before, right? So it's all that same talk that's happening internally. And so we came up with a different type of reframe. Not that there's one better reframe. We said, who says you always have to be strong? Sometimes to cry and fall apart is the best thing to do. Then it seems I find an inner strength or higher power. It's like, let go. You don't have to do everything right now. Just like take one moment at a time, one breath at a time. You'll probably feel better tomorrow. So it's that kind of feeling of, really kindness towards oneself. I want to finish with the last thing I want to talk about is something called attitudinal healing. It's based on Jerry Jampolsky's book. He was a psychiatrist, a pediatric psychiatrist in California that worked with kids with chronic diseases, including cancer and so on. He essentially taught them to choose kind of the positive sides, like seeing the best in people, for instance, recognizing that you're more than your cancer diagnosis. It was just like a much bigger perspective. And there's even this idea of kind of like what I would call observer consciousness. It's like being able to watch your own journey and to love that kind of character with all the foibles and weaknesses, with time. And that kind of perspective, the observer consciousness is very peaceful, very calm. It's kind of like in Nova Scotia, we have these big hurricanes, and like the cancer diagnosis can be like walking down a beach in the middle of a hurricane, right? So it's like the wind's blowing and you're getting pushed this way and that, and the waves are crashing and the salt's in your eye and you're cold to your bone. And it's very difficult psychologically. Like there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of kind of fear and so on. And yet the same hurricane is viewed from, miles up into the sky, looking down at that beautiful swirl, or being 30 or 40 feet below the ocean's surface. It's much more peaceful space. And so there's part of us that we can tap into that's very peaceful, very calm, very loving, and can make good decisions even when we are feeling that the world is very, very difficult in that moment. And so we can do these things. We can take care of ourselves from a physical perspective. We can work on the psychological perspective, and we can also recognize that we're something more than just our diagnosis and our personalities, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll leave it there. I've touched on a lot of information in the hour 15 or so, and I think it's time to open up for questions. I will just say that, folks, if you want to contact me directly, I'm happy to connect with you. I think we can have a really good conversation together. But rob.rutledge at NS, as in Nova Scotia health.ca is my email. And I think I can escape here, and I think I can stop share, stop presenting. So, and back to Patricia and team.
Wow, what a great presentation, Dr. Rutledge. It's been such a great mix, comprehensive. You've had good scientific evidence, practical aspects, tips, acknowledging that changing can be hard. So let's start small and then grow from there as we feel we need to do. It was excellent. Thank you
Thank
so,
you.
so much.
Thank you. Real pleasure.
And yeah, and we do have time for questions. So, to Dr. Rutledge, sitting too much is harmful. How about standing too much? If we stand more than 6 hours per day, does that cause any harmful things to our bodies?
Yeah, so big picture is, like with every activity, you want to slowly train yourself to to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And so even if I think about, well, I think people when they're doing their emails could be at a stand-up desk, for instance, because that's it. Or if you transition from like, I'm going to watch a movie with my, I'm going to watch a show with my loved ones, and then I'm going to go do my emails. Like, don't just like sit there and then sit there. Have a little transition period whereby you're actually stretching, so you're not getting all this sitting at the same time. And so then for the emails part of it, I would say You're slowly standing more and more. Maybe you only stand 5 minutes on the hour to start out with, but then slowly you ramp it up. You can train yourself to stand for 6 hours per day and you would not be hurting yourself. We humans are designed to stand up and especially move and stretch and so on, but also listening to our bodies and taking care of our bodies. Again, any advice I suggest here, like see how it works in your life and see how you feel. Yeah.
Thank you. We've had quite a few comments about how excellent your presentation has been. And we have another question. What are good strength improvement exercises?
Right. Okay. So if you're looking at the kind of the technical part of this, what you want to do is to be, as I said, use more different muscles. And there's so many ways to use those muscles. But for instance, there's probably 3 or 4, like doing squats. You guys can do that one again if you want with me. Like just doing squats in the squat. You don't have to go very deep, right? And so you would do like 10 squats and then give yourself like 30-second break or do another exercise and then 10 squats, right? And then slowly as the weeks go on, you wouldn't really change that program very much. As the 2 weeks later, you might do 3 sets of 10, maybe you do 12, maybe go deeper, maybe you grab onto some soup cans and you do it with a little bit of extra weight. And so you slowly get stronger. So squats, different ways for the core, then different core exercises, and then upper arms and so on. But really, you should probably follow a program and learn the technique. I think that's really the big picture. But you really can do the simple stuff like that and have a profound influence on your strength and function and ultimately your health. Hope that helped.
Great. And Emma reminded me that tomorrow we have a session from 2 professionals from the Refit Center here in Winnipeg, and they will be able to talk more about exercise and cancer. So that's
Excellent.
great.
Yeah.
We have another question for you, and it is, what is the best time to take vitamin D? Is it, is it in the morning or at night before going to sleep?
I don't know that answer. I suspect that it doesn't matter really if you're getting the number, and it's 1,000. It's usually 1,000 to 2,000 international units per day. And what I would suggest for everybody is go to your family doctor and ask to have your vitamin D levels measured, because you don't really actually know how much you need unless you actually measure that level in your bloodstream. It is very important. In fact, vitamin D is also supposedly anti-cancer. Like there's some change, some decreased inflammation that can actually help prevent some cancers as well, as is the latest data that I've learned about.
Thank you. We have a few more. Um, do you have to go to the gym to improve your strength muscles?
No, as I was trying to give you, like there's probably, it's kind of redundant now because we have strength training programs from home that are simple, that can use elastic bands, that can use body weights. Like that, the squats that I was just going through, like that really does test the quads, which is the front of your butt muscles. Like there's a lot of big muscles being used as you do that stuff. And so you want to kind of stress them to the point like, oh, that's hard to do, right? In your 10 reps type thing. And then the muscles will respond to that.
Here's another one. After chemotherapy, when is the time to start walking a distance and how long?
Mm. Yeah, so each person is different, obviously. What I would have wanted, and what I'm really hoping that the Centers of Hope will help facilitate, is that right from diagnosis, you'll actually start on a little bit of an exercise program. You start your walking program so that you're actually, by the time you get to your oncology, by the time you get your chemotherapy, you're actually stronger, and more physically fit, more energy, et cetera, et cetera. And the data is very clear that it allows people to get through their treatment more easily. And so to answer your question as well as then after chemotherapy, yeah, so typically, depending on the chemotherapy, and it's so different for so many people, but people are like tired maybe for a day or two or maybe in a week. Do something a little bit, keep yourself going. And then on the good weeks, maybe the 2 or 3 weeks that are the good weeks, then you can kind of ramp that up more and more. But it's always, for me, it's this balance of making sure that you're not pushing yourself so hard that you're too tired the next day. It's just that kind of balancing act, and you get smarter and smarter and smarter at realizing that if I can just slowly increase my activity every week, I ramp it up by maybe 5 minutes or 3 minutes more than the previous week. You slowly get stronger that way. And it's the same thing with the chemotherapy. Maybe as the chemotherapy goes by, you can, you get a little bit more tired, et cetera, and you'll have to be doing less. But again, you're listening to your body and figuring that out, and then talking to your physicians if need be.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, this fits within the prehabilitation realm, right? And we are
Yes,
considering this for the Hope and Healing program. Absolutely.
love it, love it. So important.
hmm We have more questions. Um, if you have to take vitamin, vitamin B12,
Uh-huh.
is it better to take shots or sublingual?
Yeah, it depends on your ability to absorb. My wife and I take that as an oral tablet, and we're having no problems. I've had my vitamin B12 level tested. Maybe if your gut's irritated, it's not as easy.
Yeah.
The
Sorry,
vitamin
there's more
B12.
information in the question that I should have
Yeah.
included.
Okay.
So this is in the context of having a B12 deficiency after colorectal cancer.
Right. Yeah. So therefore, the shot then bypasses the having to absorb it. Right. But again, you would want to talk to your doctor. I mean, that's such an excellent question, and to
hmm
recognize that you need to kind of take care of yourselves. Yeah.
Okay, one more. I have a recumbent bike. If I just pedal lightly, minimal effort while watching TV or reading, that's better than just sitting, right?
100%. Love it. Like that's just smart. Like why
Yeah.
why not? Why not just like a little bit of exercise? I feel good. I'll be happy. I'll get the 3 minute feel better effect, and I get to watch my show at the same time. That's
hmm
good. Smart. Love it.
Yeah, that's great. So I don't think we have. We do have one more. Um, is there any specific diet or exercise to keep fit while on treatment? Any food to avoid and any food that's a must take?
Yeah. So this is where you tap into everything. So it's really about becoming an expert in your own health. I think and so you're tapping into all the resources CancerCare Manitoba is providing. You're learning, you're talking to your doctor, you're figuring out what works for you. Right. And so the exercise that I would want you to do is the exercise that you'll keep on doing, right? So it's almost like you might be motivated like right near the start of treatment or just like, in the midst of treatment, but I want you to exercise for another 25 years, right? And so you want to test out what works for you. In the same way, we can use the principles of diet, right? And so I'm saying, and luckily, I feel really good because we recommended whole foods for the most part, lots of different types of foods, all combined together. There's no one best diet. It's what you will actually eat, and using those principles and what you like. Again, I'm thinking about your health for 25 years to go, and so keep experimenting. See what makes you feel good. What makes your gut feel good? What makes your brain feel good? It's one big long experimentation and learning journey, and being really kind to yourself while you're doing it.
hmm Here is a question that I think it will be great because you're a radiation oncologist. So it says, great presentation. What would your advice be regarding activity for those who have radiation and not chemo? I find that there is not as much emphasis on effects of radiation as there is on chemo.
Okay, so this is really helpful for everybody, and this is why it's really important to go to these type of events, because then you learn big picture, and then you can apply that knowledge to your life in a big scenario. So radiation is like those beams that kind of go into the body, and they kill off cancer cells, and they can irritate the normal cells as well. And so typically what happens is maybe 2 or 3 weeks into radiation treatment, and for maybe even 2 or 3 weeks after the radiation treatment is done, there's something called inflammation, right? We've been talking about inflammation. The tissue gets irritated and it releases those chemicals into the body that goes up to your brain, kind of like when you get a cold and your lymph nodes are kind of swollen. They're also releasing chemicals to your brain saying, rest, relax, don't exercise, just, you're tired right now. So inflammation is going to happen during the radiation treatment. That's going to make you feel tired. And it may also cause like a sunburn where outside and internally that may affect how you exercise or eat, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is that the radiation is causing inflammation. It causes fatigue, peaks during radiation, even a few weeks afterwards, and settles down again. If you exercise beforehand and are stronger, you'll feel less fatigue. If you continue to even do like a light walking program during the radiation, you'll feel less fatigue. And this whole lecture, again, was about the anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Less inflammation in your body means you have less fatigue and you feel better and you function better. And that's what I want you to do. So bottom line is you can do whatever you want in terms of exercise, staying within all the limits, but that will help you through the fatigue of exercise. I think that's what's specific to radiation.
Hmm. And there's one question about the benefits of walking or pushing oneself to walk in the context of a neuropathy.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, I'm sorry you've suffered that side effect. So chemo or whatever treatment has gone and irritated the nerves. And oftentimes people with neuropathy have like tingling or pins and needles in their fingers and in their toes or their feet. And if it happens on their feet, then it's hard to walk because it kind of hurts a little bit. It's like uncomfortable, or maybe the muscles in the legs are a little bit, less strong because of the neuropathy as well. So it happens to people. And so then there's always these kind of workarounds or being creative as to how is it that you can get your heart to kind of pump harder. And sometimes it could be on a bike. It's just easier for neuropathy people. Maybe it's going for a swim. Like be creative. Maybe it's just like doing upper body muscle exercises. So again, it's so important that you go talk with an exercise specialist. They're so good at modifying and tailoring an exercise program that can work for you, that will be fun and beneficial. So there's lots of different options of trying to figure that one out. So tap into the experts.
One more question. Do other doctors who are not cancer specialists have background knowledge on how to support cancer warriors?
Yeah, we can have a long conversation about the medical system. Physicians are humans. They have different levels of training. They have different interests and so on. And what I would say to you is don't rely on even your oncologist to kind of guide you to what we're talking about today, which is the empowerment piece. Don't rely on your family doctor. Don't rely on anybody else. You're trying to figure this out for yourself. Recognize the family doctor has a particular perspective and can provide certain care. The oncologist may have a certain background. They're working extremely hard to tap into the best possible treatments, going to national, international conferences, advocating for the best possible physical care. So that's what they specialize in. And you specialize in your own life in this whole other empowerment piece. And you've got support within CancerCare Manitoba, Centers of Hope, and other partners here that you can tap into. So I just don't put your hopes up too high on the physicians, because it's a team effort, right? And you're the kind of the center, and your family can help you and all that stuff. But talk to the experts, and your doctors may not be able to help. Hate for that to be the final comment, but it's just the truth. It's the empowerment piece, right? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have a question about if the presentations are going to be available for people to view after. And the answer is, with the speaker's permission, we will be posting the presentations after the fact through this platform. So people will be welcome to view them again if that's what
Yeah.
they would like. And I
Yeah.
can see that people are liking that answer because they are clapping with the emojis.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so, so much, Dr. Rutledge. It has been great. Thank you.
Yeah.